The earth trembles beneath steel wheels. A blast of steam hisses into the air. Iron screams, and then movement. Forward, relentless, powerful. In that moment, something truly extraordinary happens. Man conquers distance, not with wings, not with sails, but with fire and water. A thunderous machine pulled from the forges of the industrial age, breathing steam and spitting coal smoke into the sky, charging down tracks that would soon wrap the world. This is the story of the steam locomotive, the mighty engine that didn't just change how we travel, it changed who we are. But to understand how it came to be, we have to travel back to the beginning, back to a time before speed, before rail, before revolution. The year is 1804, and in the coal-rich valleys of South Wales, an ambitious Cornish engineer named Richard Trevithick mounts an iron boiler onto a set of wheels. The world scoffs. And then, against all odds, it moves. His invention, the Penydarren locomotive, was noisy, heavy, and broke the tracks. But for the first time in history, a machine had hauled wagons along rails, powered not by horses but by steam. This was the spark. Soon, another man took that spark and turned it into a blaze. George Stephenson, the father of railways, was born into poverty, a colliery worker's son who taught himself to read and build engines. By 1825, he unveiled the Stockton and Darlington Railway, the world's first public railway to carry passengers and goods. His engine, the Locomotion No. 1, lumbered along at 15 miles per hour, fast enough to make spectators gasp in awe and fear. But railways were still in their infancy, and their future wasn't guaranteed. Many still believed horses were safer, cheaper, and more reliable than machines. Enter the Rainhill Trials, 1829. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway Company needed a locomotive powerful and dependable enough for their ambitious passenger line. So they held a competition, 5 contenders, 1 prize. The lineup was a clash of ideas and egos. There was Cycloped, powered somewhat hilariously by a horse on a treadmill. It broke down. Then came Perseverance, a valiant effort that failed to finish. Novelty, sleek and lightweight, suffered a burst pipe, and Sans Pareil, heavier and stronger, broke a cylinder. And then Stephenson's Rocket took the stage. Bright yellow, elegant and revolutionary in design, the Rocket didn't just win, it obliterated the competition, reaching speeds of 30 miles per hour. But not everyone was thrilled. Prominent scientists and doctors warned that traveling faster than 25 miles per hour could be fatal. Some claimed your organs might shift. Others worried that passengers would suffocate, unable to breathe at such speeds. Cartoons of the day showed passengers with their faces blown off by sheer velocity. And then there was public outrage over noise, smoke, and disruption to rural life. Farmers feared their livestock would stop producing milk. Priests declared the locomotive a godless invention. But the tracks were already being laid. By the 1830s, Britain was laying down rail faster than maps could keep up. Cities were connected. Journeys that once took days now took hours, and goods, coal, cotton, iron, could be shipped across the country at lightning speed. But steam would not stay confined to the British Isles. In France, engineers like Marc Seguin were designing their own locomotives as early as 1829. In Germany, the Adler locomotive ran from Nuremberg to Fürth in 1835. Europe quickly caught rail fever, with governments and private investors scrambling to lay track and connect towns. But the locomotive's true proving ground was the United States, a land vast, wild, and desperately in need of connection. In 1829, American inventor Peter Cooper unveiled the Tom Thumb, a diminutive steam engine that famously lost a race to a horse when a belt slipped. Yet by 1830, The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad began regular service. Soon came the monumental dream, a rail line from ocean to ocean. The Transcontinental Railroad, built with grit, sweat and sacrifice, was completed in 1869. At Promontory Summit, Utah, two locomotives faced each other as a golden spike was hammered in, connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific. The transformation was seismic. In 6 days, passengers could now travel across what had once taken months by wagon. But the United States wasn't alone. In Russia, the 1891 construction of the Trans-Siberian Railway connected Moscow to the far reaches of Vladivostok. Over 9,000 kilometers, this lifeline of steel carried steam locomotives through frozen tundra and mountain passes, binding the empire like never before. In India, steam came with empire. The first passenger train ran in 1853 between Bombay and Thane, pulled by 3 locomotives, Sultan, Sindh and Sahib. The British Raj laid down rail not just for control, but for commerce. What started as a colonial project became a national artery. By the turn of the century, India had the 4th largest railway system in the world, powered almost entirely by steam. In Africa, steam arrived on the heels of colonization. The Uganda Railway, nicknamed the Lunatic Line, was a feat of engineering that cut through jungle, savanna and lion country. Though marred by exploitation and danger, it connected East Africa's interior to the Indian Ocean, shaping trade routes and migration patterns that endure to this day. In Japan, the arrival of steam marked a national rebirth. When the first train chugged out of Tokyo in 1872, it was more than a transportation project, it was a declaration of intent. Under the Meiji Restoration, Japan was racing to industrialize, and steam locomotives were a symbol of progress. Imported from Britain, then later built domestically, these engines helped modernize a nation that had once sealed itself from the world. Even in South America, the steam locomotive charged forward. In Peru, engineers constructed one of the world's highest railways through the Andes, bridging Lima to the highlands with steam engines chugging over gorges and mountain cliffs. In Argentina, steam railways stretched across the Pampas, transforming cattle farming into a global export industry. Across continents, the steam locomotive was the great unifier. It brought immigrants and pioneers, colonists and entrepreneurs, soldiers and scholars. It shrank distances, it sped up economies, it transformed time itself, from seasonal, regional rhythms to timetables, schedules and clocks. But it wasn't all smooth steam. Early locomotives were unstable, tracks warped, boilers exploded, water stops were frequent, and opposition came too, from canal owners, stagecoach operators and terrified citizens. Still, the machines improved. From Stephenson's Rocket to the British Flying Scotsman, from the American Big Boy to the German BR-01, steam engines grew more powerful, more elegant and incredibly fast. In 1938, Britain's Mallard hit 126 miles per hour, a speed record for steam that stands to this day. By the mid-20th century, steam had entered its golden age, but it was also the beginning of the end. Diesel and electric locomotives began to take over. They were cleaner, cheaper and easier to maintain. The great iron horses of the 19th century were retired, scrapped or preserved as relics of a bygone age. Yet even today on tourist railways and in quiet museum yards, steam still breathes. Because the steam locomotive wasn't just a machine, it was a miracle of fire and pressure, of steel and steam, of human vision and ambition. It pulled not just carriages, but empires, dreams and destinies and love and romance. In the hiss of its whistle and the thunder of its wheels, we hear the sound of history charging forward, and we remember what it felt like to move the world.